Good evening and welcome in everybody to the Canadian Football Fanatics Instagram and YouTube channel. We are coming to you live after the BC Lions just fell for the fourth straight time, fourth in a row, to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 20-11. Blake, how are you feeling, buddy?
Not as bad as I felt yesterday, but still not super great. Like Nathan, his return wasn't the greatest. Um, it was it was frustrating to say the least. Like it's crazy to say, but honestly, Cole, I think the turning point in that game was on the very first drive.
What are you talking about specifically, Blake?
Well, the Lions were moving the ball like fairly decently. Stanback had a good run for a first down. Eberhard had a catch for a first down. And then Javon Katoy dropped a pass that would have been another first down. And it seemed like after that, it just went downhill for the Lions.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm not going to do a typical game recap like we usually do every week. We'll maybe pick out a few things that we like to maybe talk about here on the show tonight, but that was one of them that I wanted to start with. That they started out. It seemed like they had a little bit of rhythm going on there. You mentioned the Aiden Eberhart play over the middle for about 10-yard play and a first down. On the very next play, William Stanback immediately made an impact with a 15-yard run and another first down. And then, like you mentioned, Javon Katoy wasn't able to haul in the reception. I thought it was a catchable pass, but it was a difficult one. I don't know if he was quite ready for Nate to make that throw. And obviously, the defender did try to make a play there last second. So tough one on both sides. And then, obviously, I believe on the second down play was just a check down to William Stanback. I think he gained a few yards, but nowhere close to the first down. They ended up punting. And to continue with I guess a small recap here of the game, but the Bombers take over possession of the ball, and the Lions actually end up getting them off the field. But Pete Robertson was called for a roughing the passer call. Now, being in attendance, I was very upset with the call. I didn't think it was right. I thought it was a very well timed hit. I thought it was well within or well under, maybe a second or maybe a Mississippi, if you will. That Pete Robertson, it was kind of a bang bang thing. Claros let it go. Pete Robertson hit him, but after watching the TV copy, I guess I could see why in the day and age we play with are playing now, protecting quarterbacks and stuff like that. Glenn Suter mentioned on the broadcast that he kind of somewhat lowered the crown of his helmet, and it made some contact with Claros's helmet, I believe. I would have liked to see one more replay. They didn't show a replay in BC Place, and then they only showed one
No.
on the TSN broadcast. So would have maybe liked to see a few more angles if he actually did make some contact there. From what the replay was shown, that it did make some slight contact there of the crown of the helmet, him kind of dropping his helmet, which, as like I mentioned, day and age that we play in, trying to protect quarterbacks, they're really trying to protect the players, heads and stuff like that. So anytime you lower the crown of your helmet, you're gonna more often than not get called for that. So I think it's a tough call. It's a big bang bang play, and anytime you slow something down, um, you know, it might look in your favor, it might not. So tough play. Ultimately, that ends up keeping the Bombers on the field, and they're able to continue marching the field and end up scoring on that first possession to kind of um, you know take an early lead that they really didn't look back from there. The Lions really weren't able to get close. They were within striking distance for a majority of the game, but just were never able to muster anything offensively. So, Blake, what were your thoughts, I guess, on that roughing the passer when watching it in stadium?
Yeah, that was one that I would have liked to see a replay of as well. That happened at the other end of the stadium where I sit, so I couldn't see the hit on Claros at all. I mean, I saw that he got hit, I saw that the pass was incomplete, and then I saw the flag. As soon as I saw the flag, I knew what it was for, but I didn't go back and I didn't watch any highlights or anything like that of the game today, so I haven't been able to see the hit at all. So other than what I saw live, which, like I said, wasn't very much, I don't have a super opinion on the play.
Awesome, buddy. So it was, like I mentioned, it was a tough play to make a judge on. Um, Kind of a bang bang thing, I thought. So that's why I thought more often than not you kind of let those things go. if you feel like it's that close that you maybe are second guessing yourself, which I would think the official did, but I guess you want to protect the quarterback and protect the safety of the players ultimately. So that's how basically the game started, and the Bombers were able to capitalize on that early touchdown. Um, and BC was it was very frustrating to be in attendance and watch them really not be able to muster much offensively at all. Once again, to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And a reminder, I believe we mentioned on the weekly show if we weren't sure about Nathan's record against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I don't believe he has a victory over them.
Oh,
So,
and 4 now.
kind of a kryptonite, a big time hurdle for this team, this quarterback to get over. Even the Vernon Adams led BC Lions, they took it to them last year, week 3. They took it to them this year in week 3, but really haven't beat them in any meaningful games, right? If we go back to the playoffs last year, obviously
Mhm.
BA wasn't able to get it done. And it's just a weird thing because, maybe I guess we'll kind of sidetrack and talk a little bit of the Bombers here quickly. You obviously joking, I think, started kind of wanting to, look past the Bombers, joking, mostly joking, right, to start the
Yeah.
season, them starting kind of slow and, all that sort of stuff. And then it really started to become a pattern, right? And I think rightfully so, a lot of people were starting to write them off, right? Where I kind of just got to the point, I believe, when they played the BC Lions there 3 weeks ago, and asked the question, are the Winnipeg Blue Bombers dead now? Obviously, they had come off the victory, and I thought BC would handle them and kind of leave them at 2, and I believe would have made them 2-7 at the time.
7 at the time, yeah.
And now they've kind of reeled off these 2 wins here against BC off a bye week, so they're getting a little bit more fresh now. Kenny Lawler obviously made his return. Um, it's definitely, as a CFL fan, I've kind of enjoyed watching the Bombers over the last few years, but now
Speak
this
for
year I kind
yourself.
of but this year, honestly, I kind of felt like maybe this was their time to maybe take a step back, and that BC it was BC's time, but now as a Lions fan, this is kind of a frustrating point in time where I feel like we're stuck in stuck between a rock and a hard place, man. We really are a good team, but against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, can we get over that hurdle? Come playoff time, because whether we get them in BC Place, we've proven that we really can't beat them in these big games, right? So even that home field advantage, that stuff that we want to hold our hat or hang our hat on, is something that I feel like is still a little bit of shaky ground underneath us. So would have loved to win the season series against them. I think this is something that hopefully the team can learn from and be motivated from. But what's your level of frustration with not being able to beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here in the last few years?
Yeah, I mean it's extremely frustrating. Like not only not being able to beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but just the fact that the Lions have lost 4 straight games, as we kind of already mentioned, and it seems like they haven't played as a team, as cliche as that sounds, all season. And we're 10 games in, Cole. Like I don't know if you saw, but Shane and I were kind of disagreeing yesterday on why the Lions were losing. And it's like Shane still thinks it's more of a defense thing than anything else. And I said to him, I'm like, Shane, what's the defense supposed to do when they're on the field 35, 40 minutes a game? Like eventually they're going to get tired. You can't expect that from your defense. Winnipeg continually yesterday. It didn't matter if it was 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 1. It seemed like they were running the ball and the Lions couldn't do anything to stop it. And as our boy Jay has mentioned in the chat here, the Lions now have lost the season series against 2 of their Western Division rivals, the Bombers being one of them. They also, and I didn't want to believe it 3 weeks ago when the Elks were 0-7, but all of a sudden, the Elks are 3-7. They're only 2 games back of the Lions. That could come into play later on in the season. That the Lions have now lost the season series against both Winnipeg and the Elks.
I was muted, so tough to do, man. Especially when tiebreakers come into play, and I really feel like Winnipeg's going to hang around now, being only
Yeah.
a game back, and this could be a big time where if we're close down the stretch and they get a game and we're tied, they're going to be able to be ahead of us, and once again we might have to go to Winnipeg and or Saskatchewan and be on the road come playoff time. So big time losses these last few weeks against Western Division opponents, but I still feel like there's a lot of football ahead where they can win the season series against the Saskatchewan. So still a lot of work ahead, but disappointing for sure. So to kind of get back more talking about the game here, the Lions, like I said, they were kind of getting a little momentum on that first drive. They take over after the Winnipeg Blue Bombers go up 7-0. I believe they end up getting a quick first down from Justin McInnis right on the first play of that drive. And then I believe it was a few minutes miscommunications from there. I believe there was one where Rourke kind of rolled out, and I thought Aiden Eberhard had an opportunity to sit instead of continuing to come to the sideline where Rourke had been rolling out to. Rourke had tried to let it go back towards the middle of the field a little bit more, and it was behind Aiden Eberhard. It was a drop on second down, and the Lions had to punt once again. But it was those little opportunities that I thought really showed that, I was, and I wasn't alone. I think, you, me, very credible guys in the business, Farhan Lalji, Julio Caravetta were, pretty high on the expectations for Nathan Rourke coming into the
Mhm.
game. But, we were definitely proven wrong, and maybe given a little bit of a reality check that, what this kid's been through in the last year, what he's tried to learn. And then the fact that, we mentioned it on the preview of the game, Alexander Holland, Justin McInnis not being a part of a lot of practice last week. Nathan obviously getting to town and having a week of practice, but I believe Justin McInnis and Alexander Hollins were only in one of three of the practices last week, so
One
really not able to
practice.
get much work done with them or any really reps. And as I mentioned on the preview show, Alex Hollins was on the practice roster. He wasn't an active receiver in 2022 when Nathan was here. Obviously, that was Brian Burnham's pretty much his spot if you want to, one for one swap those guys out. But um, really not a lot of chemistry. Aiden Eberhard, obviously his first year, or excuse me, second year with the Lions now. Javon coming back from injury, so I feel like he's still dealing with injury. I believe another play on that drive that I was mentioning there, the Aiden Eberhard, miss. He kept continuing to run on the first down. I believe was the one that he put Nathan put out to the sideline for Javon Katoy. And I
Uh-huh.
don't know the view that you had, probably the players might have blocked, but I thought it was a 50-50 catchable ball, but also Nathan could have probably thrown a better ball. So would have been a catch and for a first down, but Javon's not able to haul it in. And it would have been a tough catch. I do want to make sure that's known and made clear, but
Yep.
um, just a lot of missed opportunities, and I'm sure a few maybe come to mind for you where they were, Nathan one to the sideline that comes to mind for me where he's targeting Justin McInnis, and McInnis hadn't even got out of his break yet before he'd thrown the ball, and basically had hit the ground and was incomplete before Justin McInnis had even gotten around out of his break. So just very frustrating offensively because I thought it would be a little bit more smooth and I was there with some good friends of mine who kind of surprised me last second of going to the game kind of thing. And guys that are been pretty cool for me the last few years going to the few CFL games to them. Big time NFL guys who I'm trying to slowly convert or brainwashing to be CFL fans. Obviously, they're the crew that I'm going to the Grey Cup with this year. And it's hard to kind of convince them to continue to watch the CFL when you go to games like this that are slow offensively. But you know, just I thought to kind of get back on Nate, I thought it would be a little bit more in tune just because of as we mentioned, right, the familiarity with Jordan Maximic, and I thought they would be tailored, some of the plays to what he's familiar with, some easy stuff, but it just seemed really hard, and it seemed like it was really fast out there for Nate. Where being accustomed to seeing him in the 10 regular season games in 2022, it seemed like the game was really slowing down for him. He was really it felt like ahead of the defenses more often than not, where he knew where he wanted to go pre-snap, and was beating the defense to some of these spots where on Sunday, man, it really felt like he was his head was underwater, and he was pretty underwhelmed. So what was kind of your thoughts throughout the game where I kind of expected a little bit of a slow start. I was kind of telling who I was there with, I don't know if we're gonna maybe get out to the hot start in the first quarter. Of course, they come out, get two first downs right away, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's gonna be a little bit different. But what were your kind of expectations? Getting into the second quarter there when it really just didn't pick up offensively.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Cold. Like I didn't know what to expect. Like I had hoped personally that Nathan would come out firing quite literally out of his arm there with the football. As you mentioned, that did kind of happen on the first series and then not really after that. But it seemed like into the second quarter and throughout the rest of the game, I was just like waiting for that one big play. I was like, especially when it was 7-0, like Castillo misses the field goal, and I thought, man, all the Lions need right now is one big play. That's gonna wake the offense up if they can get one big play. That's all they need. And that big play just it never came. Like throughout the game, there was multiple times. You already mentioned the attempted catch on the bench sideline where the benches are. I thought Katoy was actually going to make that catch. He obviously didn't. The one with McInnes that you mentioned as well, where like Nate throws the ball and McInnes is 5 yards up the field. As you said, he hasn't even made his break yet. And it was like the Lions were discombobulated throughout the entire game. We'll kind of probably mention it here in a minute. Even the Keon Hatcher, what turned out to be an incomplete pass on third down, like I said right away, as soon as they went to automatic review, that was on the other corner from where I sit. And I just had a feeling the way Hatcher came down. I didn't even see the ball come loose originally, but I had a feeling. I was like, I don't think he made that catch. Like everyone's so around me is celebrating. Hey, we finally got on the board. And I'm like, I don't think he made the catch, guys. Like, I don't think he did. And then, of course, you see the replay, his elbow hit. And as soon as his elbow hits, the ball falls to the ground. Of course, it's an incomplete pass.
Yeah, well said. So to get into the Lions' first little bit of success offensively is that first drive of the second quarter there, the defense was, I agree with you. I think they've been hanging this team in there the last few weeks and have been battling. Now, have we been critical of them like we were on the weekly show of wanting to see more playmaking wise and turning the ball over, that sort of stuff, sacks as we mentioned, right? Yeah, I think me and Blake both wants to see that, right? To
Yep.
make this a next level defense like a Montreal, like a Saskatchewan, right? Where they could win us some of these games where they're hanging in they're keeping us in these games. They're just not winning us these games, right? Where Saskatchewan, Montreal, some of these games for these guys, they're getting interceptions and setting up the offense in favorable field position with Shea Patterson, Davis Alexander, their backups the last few weeks, right? Whereas this defense is bending and not breaking, right? They're giving up some yards, they're giving up
Uh-huh.
some first downs, stuff like that. But you know, 25 points to Winnipeg 3 weeks ago, they were in the game for a majority of that game. I don't know what the score was there going into the third quarter, but I believe it was maybe 17-0, something like that. A few
13
weeks,
nothing, I think.
yeah. So within striking distance going into the fourth quarter, which we all know in the CFL is very reasonable to get two
Yep.
touchdowns with a full quarter, let alone maybe 3 minutes to go, right? So Edmonton last week, as we mentioned on the weekly show as well, 19-16, I believe it was there late in the fourth quarter before Falanako or whatever number 79 is name is ran into the kicker and gave the Edmonton Elks another extra possession. They get the touchdown and make it a 10-point lead, I believe it was after that in the fourth quarter. So the defense has been keeping them in this game. They've just been, as you mentioned as well, on the field for 42 minutes against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers a few weeks ago. This game was much more even. I believe it was about 29, 30 minutes, about pretty much 50-50 split in terms of time of possession to both teams. But they have been battling, and yes, I would love to see them be a little bit more opportunistic. I think of a few plays. One of the pass breakups by Adrian Green, the ball went up in the air, and Patrice Rene had an opportunity to come down with an
Mm.
interception. He missed on that opportunity. Ace Ely was another one. There was a Brady
Yeah,
Oliveira.
he jumped the route and just missed the ball.
Yeah, well, there was two times. There's that time, but there was the Brady Oliveira when Brady Oliveira kind of tried to catch it. It went off his hands up in the air, and he had an opportunity to get underneath it and wasn't able to. So Ace Ely had an opportunity at two interceptions. Obviously, TJ Lee ended up getting an interception, which is great to see. And his starting to return back into his who TJ Lee is, and he's looked basically like himself since he's returned, which is good. Something I was pretty worried about and concerned that how long was it going to take for these guys to get back up to speed and up to the players, the caliber of players that we know them. it seems like TJ Lee's pretty much stepped in as seamlessly as possible. Knock on wood that he stays healthy and is able to continue this play. And even Hatch, for the most part, is pretty much. I know offensively we've kind of struggled since he's returned, and it's definitely not on Hatch. It's definitely a team thing and something that we need to figure out. And we'll talk a little bit more here down the show. But the first bit of success was led by William Stanback, and this was
Yep.
a thing that you've been harping on for a while, me as well. But you've been continuing to bang on this door of feeding William Stanback, and I kind of, I guess, laid off that drum just because Jordan Maximic's kind of proven now of how long he's been a BC Lions offensive coordinator that he just does not like to run the ball for whatever reason. But when you're up amongst the best in the league, I guess it's somewhat right. But William Stanback, 15 carries for 100 yards. I believe he had some receptions in there for first down or two, and some nice manageable situations that he had as well. But the thing for me that was, kind of counterproductive is when you're losing, you can only use William Stanback so much, right? That's, I think, why we only seen 15 carries from him. If we're in the game, if we have a lead, right? This is a game where you can get William Stanback 25, 30 carries, and he can maybe get 150 yards, right? And really ice this game away late in the fourth quarter where when you're losing, I know we saw it, which was, I think some fans were frustrated. I was definitely somewhat questioning the calls, but when I rewatched the situations today, I kind of thought, Jordan Maximic was kind of rightfully so, but there was a few 2nd and 10 situations there in the game, yes, on Sunday that Maximic called some run plays, right, where in traditional terms, right, you're not used to seeing a run play on 2nd and 10, right, especially in the CFL where you're going to be punting on the very next down. So that's the level of confidence I feel like maybe Jordan Maximic had in the offense yesterday, which is definitely concerning considering it wasn't really out of reach, right? Where you didn't like you could have pushed the envelope, even if you're going to an outright, which you did on some of those plays and weren't able to pick up first downs. Why not try to pass the ball and see what happens? So William Stanback was going yesterday, which was a sweet sign to see, but at the end of the day, it was kind of counterproductive because we couldn't really utilize them as efficiently as we wanted to in a losing effort. So, to kind of swing it back to you, buddy, how was it for you seeing that William Stanback was able to have some success, but at the same time, the level of frustration in that as well?
Yeah, no, it was nice to see Stanback get the ball more. As you mentioned, I think that might have been his first, if not his second, 100-yard game of the season. And but as you also mentioned, it was extremely frustrating when the Lions would pass on 1st and 10 and it would be incomplete, and then on 2nd and 10 they ran a draw play, and it like, I'll give Max Emmett credit, it worked once or twice, but then he tried it a third time and a fourth time, and by then the Bombers had adjusted, and it was 2-yard gain and they're punting the ball again.
So, like I was mentioning on that drive, the Lions were able to finally have some success, and for the most part, too, they were hovering around midfield, right? They were hovering around field goal range for Sean White. They just were never to once again for the last few weeks here get in Sean White's range, and then on this drive specifically, they get into Winnipeg territory, I believe, and then Nathan throws his first interception of the quarter and of the game there on a route to Alex Hollins. I saw our friend Dave mentioned on Twitter that he thought, the both interceptions, and funny enough, they were both intended to Alex Hollins. He thought he mentioned on Twitter that the receivers, but both interceptions were intended for Alex Hollins. Could have made a better effort coming back to the ball, number one, and then running a sharper route, which Glenn Suter actually mentioned, or it wasn't actually Glenn Suter, it was Dustin Nielsen actually mentioned that he thought on the second one, I believe, the second interception later in the second quarter here, Alex Hollins kind of ran like a whip route, Blake, which is like you start to run like an in route, but you fake it and run back out. And he kind of really geared down once he sold the in route and didn't really burst out towards the sideline. And that was the one. Actually, that was the first one. Excuse me. Terrell Ford was the one before half, which was the second one. So the first one I was speaking was the one Dietrich Nils picked off, which Alex Hollins kind of came to the inside, tried to bust back out, but really didn't have any acceleration. I kind of wonder if maybe he's dealing with that injury that kept him out of practice throughout the week and wasn't able to be at 100%. But you know, tough situation because I thought Rourke was late as well, but I think Hollins could have made a better effort to at least be in better position to one break up the pass and or make the catch in a difficult catching situation. So the Lions were able to not get any points on that drive, and once again the Bombers I believe were able to capitalize on the turnover, getting a field goal in this possession, and then from that point on, it was basically a defensive game for the rest of the half. And then, as I was mentioning there, the Lions were able to get a stop with, I believe, a minute to go in the half. Still 7-0 Winnipeg, or excuse me, 10-0 Winnipeg. And I thought this is the perfect opportunity for them to kind of make this not look the way this first half has gone. To go into the locker room 7-3, 10-3, or 10-7. And a lot of people that were maybe just tuning in would think, oh, this is a close ball game, when it really was a pretty sloppy ball game, and BC would just be scoring late, and they weren't able to muster anything with a minute to go. And then Nathan was obviously picked off and was, I thought, pretty. I don't know. They only once again showed one angle on the broadcast copy, and then only saw one replay in BC Play. So I wasn't sure if Hollins wasn't out of his break. I don't know if you were able to see a better view from where you were sitting of the play where Terrell Ford was able to step in front of Alex Hollins, where I think definitely a good amount of the play was, you could blame on Nate being a little bit late on his read. I think he went left to right and came back to Hollins and was trying to, probably thinking the defender was high and would have an easy completion to the boundary side. But Terrell Ford was in the huddle. He had read it perfectly, came down, and if it wasn't for a holding call on, I believe the number 33 on the Bombers, it would have been a pick six to put a 17-0 lead there to go into the half. So 10-0 at half. Blake, what were your thoughts, and what was kind of your confidence level that the Lions were maybe able to correct things in the second half?
Yeah, I was very frustrated at halftime. I thought especially on that second interception that Nate threw. It was mentioned in the broadcast, or not in the broadcast, but on social media, I should say, after that, on both interceptions, the play before Nate almost got picked off. He wasn't. And then the very next play, he was picked off. And I thought, especially the one right before the half, he uh, he was very late on his throw. It looked like he was trying to force the ball. That was one where I actually wouldn't have minded if they ran one of those draw plays, take 20 seconds off the clock, punt the ball, and all of a sudden you're only down 7-0, 10-0, whatever it was at the half. But instead, Nate gets picked off. The Bombers get good field position, and they're able to add a field goal in the final seconds.
Yep. So, um, tough one, man, because the frustration was definitely there at half, but then looking at the score, it was like the Lions are just one big play away, one touchdown away from being right back in this game. Like I've mentioned before, the CFL game that we know and love, no lead is safe going into the second half and or fourth quarter, especially if you have more than 25, 30 minutes to play. I know the Bombers did come out of the half with possession of the football, but I believe the Lions were able to get a stop defensively to get into the second half here. So it was just like I mentioned, I was maybe a little bit of fool's gold at my confidence level and faith in Nathan being able to uh, shake off the rust, if that's what you want to call it, or just get in rhythm. I don't know what maybe the right kind of saying is with Nathan, because it's like, yes, he hasn't got the reps that it's been talked about for from Farhan Lalji, Dave Naylor as well, at guys that have attended the New York Jets and Atlanta Falcons training camps here this summer, that he wasn't getting many team reps in practice and stuff like that. But he just played last week for Atlanta. He played some preseason last year for Jacksonville and was obviously on the active roster for the Patriots to end the year last year. So he definitely got some reps. It's not like he had totally been on the bench for the last year and a half that he's been out of the CFL here. So I don't know if you want to say rhythm, rust, continuity. I think a lot of it probably gets mixed into this category for Nathan here tonight. But what's shocking, man, that they come out of the locker room. I thought Max Simmick's going to go down there, maybe calm him down a little bit, say, hey, let's go back to, some of these things that, you're really familiar with. And they weren't able to get anything mustered. So the Lions come out of the locker room and are able to get a huge stop, actually. And was actually forgot about it until I watched it on the broadcast copy here this afternoon. But the big third down stop on Chris Streveler, where he tried to sneak to the left of the on broadcast copy and was tripped up by his Stanley Bryant and turn over the possession of the ball to the Lions. I thought this is exactly what they need. They started out the second half with a turnover on downs. Winnipeg doesn't get any points, and they are able to get nothing accomplished from it. They end up, feeding William Stanback once again. He's able to get mustered together a few first downs for them, but then they end up punting once again, and that was basically the story for the rest of the game, where they'd lean on William Stanback. They'd try to, you know, basically win the game by running the football, which in the Canadian game you just can't do with two downs, right? If you get not enough yards on first down, you're not set up to win on second down running the football with second and sixes, second and sevens, stuff like that. Where Jordan Maximic and the offense tried to run on second down, it just, as we saw, it didn't work. So for the majority of the rest of the second half, man, we saw a lot of runs on first down by William Stanback, and he was able to be effective, but just nothing was able to muster together on second down passing wise and even running the football. So I believe the Bombers are able to go up 17-0 there with about 3 minutes to go in the third quarter on a Chris Streveler sneak. And that's when I thought, this is about time that the Lions, it's about do or die on this next series or two here, where, it is the CFL. We are in the fourth quarter where we have a ton of time still, but we need to get a score here to just make things a little bit closer, to feel a little bit like it's within striking distance, not a 3-score lead here. And I believe the Lions were actually able to do that afterwards, going into the fourth quarter when they kicked a field goal for the first time on a possession that started in the third quarter, went to the fourth quarter. Sean White was able to get them on the board and make it 17-3 with 14 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. When I thought, 14 minutes to go, down 14 points to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, that's within reach for sure. We can do this, probably with 5 minutes to go, to be honest. But from there, man, we basically got shut out until, Chase Bryce obviously came into the game late there in some garbage time. I believe he actually managed to go 6 for 6, which is crazy, 59 yards and through the 2-point conversion. But man, was it ever frustrating to be within striking distance the whole game and not really be able to capitalize on it. And especially there in the fourth quarter where I'm telling, obviously with a little bit of PTSD from Ottawa Red Blacks last year, telling my friends that, we can't leave yet, boys. We can't leave yet. It's the CFL. You never know what's going to happen here. And, as soon as kind of I saw, unfortunately for Chase Bryce, saw Chase Bryce, it was time to, let's go try to make the ferry, boys, and make sure we get home. It was just really frustrating, man. I think that's been the word that we've mentioned here, that 14 points, 14 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They couldn't manage any sort of momentum, any sort of push back. Like it really seemed like they just didn't push back and really got ran over by like a big, this is the way I'd put it, is just like a big brother, that the Winnipeg act like we were the little brother on Sunday, and they just bullied us. So what were your thoughts, I guess, in the fourth quarter there when they finally got on the board? It seemed like maybe, hey, this is time where we kind of start to engineer a comeback in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, I definitely thought that. I mean, I was frustrated that they had to settle for a field goal on that opening possession, because on the last play of the third quarter, Nathan looked for Hatch, and it looked like Hatch had made the catch, but unfortunately his foot was out of bounds. So then they go all the way down the field, and on the next play, Nathan's looking, can't find anyone. Eventually, I think he gained 2 yards, so it wasn't considered a sack, but he was taken down, and they had to settle for the field goal. But 2 plays later, TJ Lee finally, we've been asking for it. You already mentioned it in the post game. We've been asking for the defense to make a play, and TJ Lee on 2nd down and 7 steps in front of Ontario Wilson, picks off the pass, and I thought, uh-oh, maybe this is it. I even tweeted it. I said, is this the moment where momentum finally starts to swing to the Lions? And unfortunately for us, that just never happened. as unfortunately the Lions went 2-out, and the teams kind of played hot potato after that. The Bombers kicked a field goal, and then, as you mentioned, Chase Bryce came in late. I didn't stay for that either. I left as soon as it was confirmed by the command center that Hatch's catch was, in fact, an incomplete pass. And unfortunately, the Lions, we've said it a few times, but it seems like they can't get over the hump that is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers right now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And just to go into the chat here, a few people that are tuning in, as always, Jay, our man, on YouTube. I see Todd is as well with Stanback running well. Did the Lions try to play action to open up the pass game? They really did not, actually,
No.
now that I'm thinking about it. There's a few opportunities or a few plays that they rolled the pocket, stuff like that, that I thought they did well in 2022, but they really, it really looked that they were running a lot of basics vanilla plays that maybe Nathan is accustomed to when they were running in 2022 that I would think a lot of these guys have not probably been running in the last year and a half with VA. They're not the same quarterback. They have two different skill sets, right? Where it may be the same playbook scheme and the plays are the same, stuff like that, but not the same base package of plays where VAs is probably different, right? Where there's probably I'd say close to triple digits of plays in a pro level offense, right? Where let's say there's 100 plays in a Jordan Maximic offense, maybe 50 of them are for a VA type quarterback, and the other 50 are for a Nathan Rourke type quarterback, where they don't run those 50 as often as the other ones, right? For VA in the offense, so it just looked like they were out of sync, out of rhythm all night, and it was just very, very hard to watch, honestly. That it felt like a little bit helpless and hopeless at time, and especially me being a big Nathan Rourke fan. A lot of people, I felt bad for the kid that he felt bad enough that he had to apologize post game. He mentioned the atmosphere and stuff like that. A lot of people that were depending and expecting him to put up a good performance, which as a pro athlete, I feel like you never should apologize. For bad performance, because you're going to have them, right? You're going to have bad days at work, just like you and me, right? Where we go in
Yep.
and for whatever reason we have bad days at the office. That just happens, right? And pro football athletes are no different. So to keep going down the chat here, Q Man, he usually comes in for the BC Lions post game shows as well. He says Nathan Lynn moved the ball when they went no huddle. That was something that I noticed as well, and something that I was kind of pointing out to the people I was sitting with as well. He says in the fourth, Bryce looked good, which makes Nathan play so frustrating. I think that just shows as well, Bryce's familiarity and time he's spent now um, on the team, right? And familiar with the. I know you see that comment, which I'll get into after, but his familiarity with the playbook and the players as well, right? Where Bryce has been throwing to some of these guys for the past 4 or 5 months, right? Compared to Nathan, who has been throwing him to the last 5 days. So, lastly, I see my awesome girlfriend is chiming in here as well. She says, "Wise words." I know she's such the big BC Lions fan. I actually saw you and McKenna were on the TV copy. Hey, that was a nice
Yeah, we were.
surprise for me to see when I watched the rewatched the game this morning.
Yeah, no, we were. It was unfortunate that it was on the touchdown that wasn't, but yeah, it's one of the perks of sitting where I sit that it's not an irregular thing. I'll say that.
I was gonna say you get unbelievable like I'd say like probably like a few times a year this happens, is it not? Like
Yeah,
going
yeah.
back to last year, that's a nice good corner for you guys for sure. I will chime in here quickly. This is something that I will probably joke about more on the weekly show, but um you guys try to throw sand on Nick Dembski as well. And that MFer came back and fucking tore up against us, man.
I
I
know.
I tried to tell you guys, don't count this motherfucker out. And what does he do? Six for I think 100 and a touchdown.
15, 6 for 115 and a
Six for
touchdown.
115 and a touchdown, man. Oh, which is even more frustrating because you know what's coming from Nick Dembski too. He's running that corner route
I know.
and he's gonna get open. And it's incredible that him and Kalaros one have the chemistry, and that nobody in the league can cover it. It's not just a BC Lions thing. They do this to every team in the league since they've been together, and it's you know it's coming. You literally know that it's coming, and it happened one time for a big play there. I don't know if it was in the first half or the second half that set them
First
up
half.
into BC Lions territory. I believe it probably would have been on the touchdown, I guess. Hey, the Bombers' first touchdown,
Oh,
and then obviously I believe it was actually in your corner. Nick Dempsey scored as well, right?
yeah.
But a guy that's just been why I love him so much is a guy that Canadian, obviously. A guy that I'm familiar with because he went to the University of Manitoba with some BI Raiders alumni that I was, big fans of, looking up to them as kids. Jordan Yance, Dustin Peterson, guys like that, who went on to play with, Langley Rams alumni like Jordan Linden, stuff like that,
Yep.
Evan Foster. But big fan of him ever since his, U Sports days and then getting to the CFL, keeping an eye on him. I think he's always been such a weapon. Now he's had a tough start to the season. I can't beat around the bush or hide on that for sure because some of these fumbles here late in games, but um, he's a gamer. Like he's one of those guys that you want on your team because he's going to make those big catches. Now this year we've seen him uncharacteristically. I think make big plays for the other team, fumbling the ball, giving up the ball in some of these tight games. Um, and just he's another guy that I kind of include in that, Zach Collaros, Brady Oliveira, Mike O'Shea. As long as the Bombers have them, and I would add Nick Dempsey in there, they are going to be tough out. And I hate to say it, Blake. I hate to say it, buddy. Trust me.
Oh.
But I got it. I feel
We
like
had
the
a chance
analysts.
to kill them, Cole. We had a
I know.
chance.
Okay, this is where we'll kind of end the game recap there, buddy. And let's get into it. All right, everyone that's tuning in on YouTube, that's seen the Instagram post, the Twitter post. Is it time to press the panic button here in BC after the Lions' fourth straight loss? Where my man sitting across from me, we had a chance. We let them off the hook once again for the second time in 3 weeks. Even though I will give them all the credit where credit is due for shutting out an opponent, right where we wanted our credit last year shutting out Edmonton, which is a hard thing to do in the CFL, right? With
Yep.
singles, with the field position, stuff like that. I do not want to take anything away from shutting out the BC Lions there a few weeks ago. But we let their asses off the hook then. We let Edmonton off the hook last week, and we let the Bombers off the hook once again tonight. Now, I'm going to throw this back to you. I'm going to make this quick and sweet because I'm sure we're going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, Wednesday night. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more after you respond. Personally, for me, I am not pressing any sort of panic button. Blake, is it time to press the panic button in BC?
I don't think it is time to press the panic button just yet, Cole. However, do you want to hear my hot take right now?
I would love to.
I think if the Lions lose the next two games,
Coach
so
Campbell?
that's the Ottawa game this weekend in Ottawa and Touchdown Pacific. I think going into that game against Montreal on September 6th, the Lions do it with Ryan Phillips as the head coach. I don't think Campbell survives if they lose six in a row.
I like it. Obviously, I said that, or I mentioned that earlier in the preview of like the season that we did, the weekly show before the season started. I mentioned that I thought that would be a thing, a scenario after the season where, to be honest, I never even thought about a scenario of the BC Lions losing six straight this year. That never even crossed my mind. Um, so I could very rightfully see that. I wasn't sure if you were going to go. That's why I said Coach Campbell. I wasn't sure if you were going to say that VA might be starting that game, which I think is a possibility. I think if Nathan Rourke doesn't look as comfortable as you would want him in the organization next week against Ottawa, there's not a shot that you want to lose a six straight game as you were kind of putting out there in this scenario, where the timeline all along has been August. At some point in August, VA should be ready. Now that would be towards the end of August, Labor Day, right, where the Lions of all people are going to feel the pressure, right, to deliver a home Grey Cup. They've already, the ticket sales. They always keep reminding people of how well they're doing, stuff like that. They are not going to want to continue to slip down the standings. Now, why I will say my scenario here, why I'm confident saying I guess it's no time to put the panic button. Quickly, Jay says no, not panic time, but the BC Lions need to keep the second spot in the West. Um, I worry about getting and not worry about getting the first seed in the West, I believe. Um, yeah, Blake, I agree. If Ottawa beats us twice, panic. And he also says VA could be ready for touchdown Pacific. Campbell said on 6:50 this morning. I think that's been, like I mentioned, the thing that they've kept saying all along, the timeline. So, um, personally, for me, and I love that you actually have been a you've been fighting the brave fight. I've been staying off social media for a little bit because it's a toxic place, especially when the Lions are losing. But I see you've been fighting the good fight of battling, especially against, not against Winnipeg fans, but more specifically Saskatchewan fans who have been quick to dump on us. I know you said you were responding to Sheldon about the Lions being an eighth and some other people that were responding as well. Where the reason I'm not panicking is you look to the left of us, the Saskatchewan Roughriders they're
5-4
underwater as
one.
well. Their ship is sinking just as quickly as us. And I've been
Calgary's
getting
Calgary, like
Calgary's Calgary. I've been getting some flack from friend of the show and friend of going back to the Coast to Coast Gridiron, Daryl, who's obviously an Elks fan of. Now he's starting to chime up now quickly all of a sudden because the Elks are hot, which um, you know I guess
still
it's a
doesn't
reminder
like.
that it's a long season. There's ups and downs, right? I've always tried to stay on the ups and downs, peaks and valleys, not try to ride the roller coaster, which I'm on the roller coaster now, folks. I'll be honest here. Now, 4 weeks into this losing streak, I'm getting a little frustrated. It's hard to stay a little bit, positive minded in situations like this, and especially now trying to be a little bit more of a I don't know if you want to call it analyst, but having my media pass now and trying to be a little bit more not fan oriented and try to put that my fan heart, if you will, to the side and really think of with my head and stuff like that. But it's been hard, man. It has been hard the last few weeks where offensively nothing's really been there. But I don't think that if Rourke struggles next week once again, where obviously there's you might not find any bigger Rourke fan in BC than myself. If he struggles next week, I think there's not you can't hesitate to even think it has to be a question brought up in the meetings that week that is VA maybe our better option this year, that maybe Rourke's our guy in the future, but let you got to call a spade, right? I've been honest all along with how I thought about VA, so I got to be honest with Nathan Rourke here. I can't be a fan and get my fan feelings in the way here of if Nathan Rourke isn't the guy here. I know it's a quick thing and it's going to be a little bit of a business, but as we've seen now with VA, VA has been the pro now. He has stepped aside for Nathan Rourke. He has done it without complaining. He was great in terms of watching the broadcast again. He was always there to support Nathan coming off the sideline. He obviously wore a sweet short shirt that was like a history of BC Lion quarterbacks. I know there's people online that were mentioning that. I hope the BC Lions make that available. I do as well. I hope that maybe if by chance, maybe Matt Baker, Nick Kowalski, whoever's watching, part of the organization, if you guys are,
Do it, Nick. Do it.
please do make that a part of the merch. I would love to purchase that, and I would imagine I won't be alone in that as well. So VA has been the ultimate pro in the situation. Nathan, you cannot get your, this has to be a scenario. I think that you have to keep a real possibility. They have said so, right, in the
Uh-huh.
melee availabilities that this won't be the last time we see VA. He could possibly start some games here down the stretch. So if they were to lose in Ottawa next week, where you will be, you know, live in the flesh in Ottawa, I think this is time that if VA is ready to go, you might have to go with him in Touchdown Pacific. What are your thoughts on that? Because I agree with you that I think if you lose in TD Pacific to make it 6 straight, I think it's the time to Coach Campbell needs to get the boot, and RP Jordan Maximic, whoever you want it to be, needs to kind of come in and be that intern for the rest of the season. So, what are your thoughts on if they lose to Ottawa next week? Is it time to see VA back under center?
Yeah, I agree with our man Jay. I don't think Touchdown Pacific is the game to do it, only because that game is in Victoria. That's Nathan's hometown, kind of everything like that. It's probably the only time he's ever going to get to play in his hometown. So I think Nathan will get the start in the next two games no matter what. However, I do agree with Todd and Q-Man and what they have said here in the chat. And Todd specifically saying it's time to cut an underperforming veteran. Q-Man calls out a man specifically, and I hate to say it because you and I both, we were super excited when this signing happened, but I 100% agree with Q-Man. I think, I don't know if maybe he'll be used as a scapegoat, but I think it's time to cut Covington. Let do I think the Lions are actually going to do it? No, I don't, because of all the money they've invested into Christian Covington. But it was like, even at one point yesterday, I believe it was after the the Strebler touchdown that made it 17-0. Covington came off the bench, came off the field, I should say, onto the bench, and he very audibly, to the point where I could hear it sitting in my seat, he slammed his helmet down and had a big F, you know what, and he was very upset. So he's not happy with his play right now. Um, Maybe it's a guy that you and I have talked about for a few weeks on the weekly show. Is it Chris Sliger that needs to get the boot? I'm a man who is very and as you said, we're in the media, we can't always do this, but I'm a man that has had a soft spot for Andrew Pearson. When he was in, I thought he did quite well. I mean, we joke about it. He made that catch against Winnipeg, but just generally in the offensive line, he did very well, I think. And unfortunately, for the past 2 weeks, he's been a healthy scratch. He hasn't even been able to get on the field.
Yeah, it's been tough, for sure. I saw as well. I believe Michael Couture was brought up that maybe it's time for him to be one of those veterans that maybe is cut for Tyler Packer and Chris Slugger were playing pretty well in place of David Neville and Michael Couture, who were obviously the starters coming into the season. They get hurt in week one. Week two, Tyler Packer and Chris Slugger come in and really had been playing well. And then they get placed, or Michael Couture comes off the sixth game. He gets brought in. And it's obviously a team sport. It's not a one man thing that, oh, Michael Couture comes in, the Lions offense hasn't looked like this because of him. You could say that about Hatcher, which I just said earlier that it hasn't been because of Hatcher, right? It's never a one man thing. There's a ton of situations going on, but is it maybe time for him to maybe take a seat to make Tyler Packer the center again and Chris Slugger as the left guard? But time will tell. Like I've been saying, it's unfortunate. Michael Couture is one of the higher paid offensive linemen in the league, so it's tough to kind of now with cap situations and stuff like that. It's tough to really make that a reasonable scenario with I would imagine Chris Slugger and Tyler Packer maybe are probably like the same amount of that they probably take up the same amount of cap as Michael Couture. I would think that Tyler Packer's a younger guy who's not played much. Chris Slugger's a veteran who came in this offseason from Montreal, but I'd be interested to see if it's cap wise if it's able to fit kind of you get two players for one essentially. So I would think hopefully those are conversations had, but curious to see. Jay also says I believe you touch. He said personally, I think work will start touchdown Pacific only because the game is in Victoria. I disagree, and I know Jay said it earlier as well. He mentions it here, but VA gets the game in Montreal for sure. I'm calling it now. Love that attitude, buddy, but it's pro sports. You're not going to start guys because Montreal is his former team, and because they play in Victoria, and he's a Victoria guy. They are not going to
Yeah.
want to lose six straight. That's why I think it's a consideration in Victoria. Do I want to? No. Me being a big Nathan Rourke fan, obviously I don't want to, right? I want to see Nathan Rourke start for the rest of the season, but we have to really realistically think about who gives us the best chance to win this year. And is Nathan Rourke able to do that on the fly like this coming into the season in the middle of the year where VA already has a built-in chemistry with these set receivers? Jordan Maximic's playbook this year, his plan this year. Now, I'm 100% bought into Nathan Rourke being the guy in the future, the guy in 2025, 26. But I think definitely the conversation needs to be have if they were to lose in Ottawa next week. is it time for VA to be brought back? And Q-Man also says VA and Rourke will split time down the stretch. Hot hand will get snapped. He says likely 80s Eskimos. They play the hot hand. Dunnigan, Allen, and Ham. Obviously both uh, Blake and I believe Jay as well. Actually, 90s baby, so not born or not able to watch those 80s teams. So not familiarity with kind of like guys being rotated like that. So I just don't love that idea of rotation at quarterback with wanting to get guys hot and in rhythm, especially that quarterback position. So I really feel like it won't be any sort of rotation. I think you kind of try to go. I guess that's what maybe what Q Man's alluding to with the hot hand of. Um, I think if Rourke doesn't clearly have the hot hand, you go to VA, and it's not a rotational thing. It's a this is VA's car or VA's team until proven otherwise type situation where you're not giving them mixed signals. You're not bringing in one quarterback here there, where you're already doing that a little bit too much here. Going back to VA possibly right where you're VA, Dolegala, Rourke back to VA. Maybe you're doing that a little bit too much, but I think that's in a last ditch effort to kind of stop the slump, number one, and then try to get back to the chemistry that you guys had there early in the season. So curious to see. To kind of long-winded point of getting back to the is it time to press the panic button here in BC? I don't think so, just because of like I mentioned, them being tied with SAS, right? Winnipeg creeping up is
Basically, yeah.
definitely Winnipeg creeping up is a concern, especially like I mentioned earlier that we haven't proven that we can beat them in big time games. We haven't proven we can beat them in games that matter, right? Who cares honestly about week 3 games, right? And I've said this all along about Winnipeg, and it's a team where me being a Buffalo Bills fan, I compare this maybe to the NFL. Me being a Bills fan and a BC Lions fan, right? Unfortunately, I'm saying this right, but my uncle's a Kansas City Chiefs fan, right? And he's also, I guess more of a realist, right? Where he kind of texts me. I'm starting to get him into the CFL about the CFL when he tunes in, but um, the Bills really haven't been able to beat the Chiefs in a big time game, right? Where
Nope.
they've had some success against them in the regular season, but I've said this to my uncle where last year they were kind of in Kansas City specifically pressing the panic button because they got off to a bad start. Winnipeg same thing this year, but what I told him going into last year is like you're now the New England Patriots. You're now the Golden State Warriors where you've been to the Super Bowl now. You understand what it takes to get there, and to be just 100% to call a spade. You're not getting up for games in week 1 through 8 in on the road in Saskatchewan and stuff like that because as Andrew Harris said it when I had him on the podcast too. As dumb as it sounds to some of these teams, where Edmonton, you can't really say that the last few years of the season doesn't start until Labor Day, right? But for some of these teams, they probably really do think like that in a sense, right? Where you get
Yep.
healthy till Labor Day and you can turn it on down the stretch and get hot in the playoffs, right? We saw it from Montreal last year. Saskatchewan, it's been kind of the opposite the last few years of not being hot after Labor Day, right? Where I think that's why it's not time to press the panic button for BC because they have a ton of time here still ahead of them that they can still right their wrongs here going into and past Labor Day. And that also is the other side of the sword where Winnipeg is still within striking distance, especially now being only one win back and having the season series. I think BC is gonna figure it out here in the next few weeks, and it'd be perfect time to split or get a nice two wins over Ottawa here. So Blake, we've been an hour, buddy, kind of trying to wrap things up here. Any thoughts? I guess finally after the show.
Are we gonna do game balls quickly,
We
or we
we
not gonna
will,
worry
yeah,
about it?
we will. You can give me your game balls.
Okay, so just to wrap up the game quickly, I think I text you when you text me this morning and said we were gonna do a post game live or after all. I said it's a good thing we did end up doing it today and not yesterday, because if we had did it yesterday when you were kind of trying to catch a ferry and I was driving home and whatever, it would have made for a good YouTube show, but it would have been expletive filled. Let's call it what it was. It was very frustrating being in the building, but now that I've had some time to think about it, it's still frustrating. It still drives me insane that we haven't been able to beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in, as you said, a meaningful game, and since their run really started. But On second thought, and after seeing more of social media and even people that aren't Lions fans kind of coming to Nathan's defense, he had one true practice with the starters. Like, that's not enough to be able to get back into full rhythm and everything like that. Um, I think that Nathan is going to come back stronger than ever this upcoming Saturday. I don't want to predict a Lions win yet. I'll wait for the weekly show for that. However, I do think that the Lions will play a lot better than they have been in the last 4 games. As far as my game ball goes, I don't think you can go anywhere else other than William Stanback. We made the mention 15 carries for 100 yards. I'll pull up the catch numbers in a second here, but well
Four,
over
four,
100 yards of
he only
offense.
had
Sorry,
four
go ahead,
receptions
Cole.
for 12. He only had 4 receptions for 12 yards, which I thought he had a little bit more, but that's what the CFL website says.
Yeah, so he had 19 total touches for 112 yards. And unfortunately for everyone that was in the building there last night, he was really the only Lion that seemed to be making anything happen.
Yeah, well said. Just to quickly go back on the fellas here, and not to push back too much, but fellas, when we're going back to the '80s, I think that's called a one-off, where it doesn't happen too often. And if it hasn't happened for the last 40, 30 years, it's probably not a thing that's too common. So as much as I think it's maybe a possibility. Like conversations, I'm sure have been had in house and with Jordan Maximic, Rick Campbell, and Neil McAvoy of should we maybe consider this rotating whatever scenario. But I would think that as of now, that's all they've probably been. It's just conversations, nothing concrete or official. Because like I mentioned, we're talking about the '80s and '89 and stuff like that. It's probably considered a one-off and not likely that's going to happen. Especially, I can't really think of in the time of me watching of a true like 1-2 rotating quarterback system. And then as we talked about with Dave Dickinson, Casey Printers, a positive one that's not there's not turmoil in there, and there's not a divided locker room, stuff like that. So
Yeah,
um,
the only one I can think of, Cole, excuse me, sorry, is when the Bombers originally traded for Zach Claros for a little bit there. They did have him and Strebler kind of split duties, but then after, I think it was really only after like a game or two where Claros took the starter role and kind of ran with it.
well said, well said. So I will push back on you slightly. I think there is another place to go for a game ball here, and he was a guy that jumped out. He jumped out when I was at the game, but he jumped out right away when rewatching the game. I'm gonna go with Sione Tihema, who had 2 first quarter sacks. I realized he had one sack in real time watching the game at BC Place, but getting back here, rewatching it, had 2 first quarter sacks here, which could have set him up for a big game, right? Where he could have maybe had some impact sacks there in the second half. Had 2 sacks in the first quarter and was shut out from there, but I think he was a bright spot as well. We've been pretty critical here on the weekly shows and the preview stuff like that of wanting to see them finish a little bit more, get sacks and stuff like that. He was able to get 2 sacks, and I think he deserves a mention. I'll give him my game ball there and not cop out and copy you of William Stanback. But I think deservedly so, William Stanback would probably get the first and only game ball of the game. But I will give mine to Shoni Tiama for getting on the board twice and creating some early havoc there for the Bombers offense. So, Blake, about an hour and 5 minutes here on the show. Like I mentioned off camera, buddy, I think it was a little therapeutic to get on the show here tonight. I know I was frustrated as were you, and probably glad that we didn't get on right away as well. I was tired, so I probably would have been a little bit more grumpy as well. But like I said, I think it's a little bit therapeutic to get back on here, have a little bit more of a 2020 bird's eye view, to take a step back and not be so wound up in the moment, stuff like that. And I think people from the outside perspective, outside this fan base, I'm sure will call us homers, will call us biased, whatever you want to call it. I think put my BC Lions hat to the side, put on my analyst hat. I really think this team is a. I guess I want to be careful how I word this. Do I want to say contender? Like, is that fair to say, or do I say they're a good team still?
I think they're a West. I think they're a Western contender right now. Still,
Here,
I wouldn't call them a Grey Cup contender though. In my
here's
opinion, my Grey Cup contenders is Montreal and then everybody else.
Yeah, so that's great. Well said. Like that's what I was just gonna say is basically is what I'm gonna say is Montreal's in a tier of himself, and then I think you have BC, Saskatchewan, and Ottawa of trying to figure out who's that next group, and you have probably Edmonton and Winnipeg probably creeping in that fourth, fifth range of teams that are going to be knocking on the door. Hamilton just continues to make me scratch my head with some of these moves.
Yeah,
I
it's
will.
literally Montreal at the very top, Hamilton at the very bottom, and then everybody else.
Yeah, that's pretty fair in my opinion, and I'm hoping that it's not as confusing come the Power Rankings 4.0 because I would really like to not have a scrambled egg brain when it comes time to make my opinions. But it's been an interesting 4 weeks, man, and as I've said here a few times on the show tonight, I'm not pressing the panic button by any means because I think the Lions have a lot to play in front of them. I think they'll correct things and get back on track, and then as well basically every other team around them other than Winnipeg and Edmonton in the Western Division has kept pace with them losing wise and really hasn't gained ground on them if you're the Calgary Stampeders. So Edmonton gaining a little ground with 3 wins now. Winnipeg on the heels of both Saskatchewan and BC, unfortunately, with 4 wins now as well. So, as I mentioned on social media last week, man, things are getting tight. And as a CFL fan, I love it. As a BC Lions fan, I hate it because things are starting to get a little bit more anxious here. But it's been fun tuning in here when I'm able to and being able to watch games throughout the week now with things, stakes being a little bit more on the line now. I was able to watch the Edmonton game, kind of, taking that, seeing if they were able to, which, playing Hamilton, we probably should have expected how the game was going to go. But curious to see if they're going to be able to keep pace now and keep up, which it looks like they've kind of hit their stride now and found a little bit of momentum here. So, we'll save that, I guess, for the weekly show. Wanted to get on here, Blake, though, to, get our feelings, out there and give our thoughts out there as well as kind of vent for the fans as well. But I wanted to take the opportunity for us to go a little bit longer here tonight and really elaborate how we feel instead of doing it on the weekly show. And we have, 2 other people with us and not want to, spend all our time talking BC Lions and being able to focus a little bit more on a show. Like I was mentioning to Jay, kind of doing a little bit of a hybrid show tonight, not really a post game with not too much of a recap, stuff like that, but, still including game balls, did a little bit of a recap. More so, just like I said, wanted to kind of vent a little bit, get our frustrations out there, and then I think it was therapeutic that I feel a little bit better now, and it's time to flush the tape, if you will. And
It's
as Bill
on to
Belichick,
Ottawa.
it's on to Cincinnati. As Bill Belichick, it's on to Ottawa, buddy. Last thoughts from yourself.
No, I'm really excited, man. I don't have to work for the next 2 weeks, so I'm excited to get on a plane and it's gonna be a good time. I think this is the first time I've ever gotten to see a BC Lions road game, so it's gonna be a really good time. But no, as far as the game's concerned, I agree that it was therapeutic to get on here to talk about it. Actually, no, that's a lie. There is one more thing I wanted to ask you. Did you see the Bombers tweet at the end of the game, and how did you feel about it?
I honestly, Blake, I like I said, I've been staying off Twitter, which is probably bad for the analyst side of things, but let's just say I keep all receipts. I'll leave it at that, Blake. We will handle this at another time because as much as I feel like I hate this because until that show a few weeks ago, I had kept. I think you can vouch for me here. I had kept
Yep.
pretty much uh, my faith, if you want to call it, in the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I finally kind of give in a few weeks ago when they played the BC Lions, and now they've bitten me in the butt. Now in the last few weeks, I don't think it's unfair to say. I think the BC Lions are still a better team. Like
Yeah.
that's that's maybe I'm a homer, but like as much as I kind of use this against you, Zach Collaros still is 5 of 9 or something like that. 5 touchdown passes to 9 interceptions. He really
He
hasn't.
threw one. He threw one again yesterday, so I think he's at
No, he was 4 of 8 going into the game. He threw 1 touchdown
yeah.
pass and threw one
So he's
interception.
5 of 10 now or whatever.
Yeah, so he hasn't really been great. So it's like the Lions can do it. Like this could be the year. So that's why, yes, I have not written out the Bombers, but I've maintained this the whole time of like I don't think this year's Bombers are as dangerous as years previous because of who they're without. You know, Jackson Jeffcoat, Dalton Schoen, um, Yoshi Hardrick, right? They've lost a few of these guys that have gotten them deep here in these playoff runs where I think this is the opportunity now. Let's cross our fingers, Blake. It's in BC Place and not Winnipeg. God forbid, that this is the year they get it done. We saw Adam Bighill obviously leave the game on Sunday. Who's
Yeah,
when he's in there,
non-contact injury again.
when he's in there though, he does his job, right? He's still almost as close to prime Adam Bighill as you can get, but as you can see, he is not as durable. He's showing his age. He's getting a little bit more banged up now, a little bit more like more frequently, not able to stay in for the whole seasons a lot of the time. So could the Bombers be without Adam Bighill down the stretch? You never know, right? Things could happen. I always remind people whenever it happens how things can change so quickly with injuries, just like that. With a staff of one play, things can happen. I do not wish injury upon anybody, but that's the game that we play. It's the game we love. It's the game we watch. That's football. At the end of the day, things like that happen, and you got to hope that your depth behind them, the players that are behind them, can step into that opportunity and keep the ship headed in the right direction, which we hope here in BC is able to get going in the right direction. We are not headed in the right direction right now. We are headed
No.
back to port. Or we are not. We're headed for freaking. We're crashing into the rocks right now. We're not even headed to port, man. But let's hope one of those guys take hold of the wheel and turn us back in the right direction. Blake. Lastly, buddy, I guess just like, comment, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button.
Oh,
I actually saw shout out to my man Paul Romanoff, VI Raiders receiver, and I'm a boy. He just subscribed to the YouTube channel. I believe we're up to
let's go.
225 or something like that. So let's try to get to 250. I believe we are closing in on 900 followers on the Instagram at Canadian Football Fanatics. I also saw shout out to Sherry Pearson. She was also in the Instagram chat, which was cool. I saw her at the game. She is the Raiders photographer. She's really cool and has been nice to me. She's kind of been like my friend on the sideline, getting used to being on the sidelines at games and stuff like that. So it was cool. It was actually her first CFL game ever being live
That's
there. So
awesome.
wasn't the best game, but she was super positive. She actually sent me a couple comments via DM, and she was very very positive. She said, I think 1 week was not enough time for the teammates to get to gel and get ready with Nathan. These are not the teammates that he played with before. She says Nathan is an awesome player, but hasn't played a full game in a couple of years. I think next game will be different. So yeah, very positive considering things were. She could have very well turned her back on the CFL going to her first CFL game, and it seems like she's come out on the other side and really enjoyed her time. I know she was sporting the BC Lions jersey, so it seemed like she had been bought in, and it's been cool seeing stuff like that. Like I mentioned, going to the game on Sunday with some buddies of mine last minute. As I mentioned to you all last week, I had not planned to go to the game and continue not to plan to the game. And Saturday afternoon we got together, watched the fights. The boys said, we're planning to go to the game, uh, whether you like it or not, you're coming too. You can't miss. Last year we went to the Saskatchewan game the week after Nathan got hurt. So obviously last year I'd been doing my groundwork to get them to come to a game, get them to come watch some CFL. I finally do, and Rourke gets hurt the week before, so we end up watching. I believe it was Michael O'Connor. Was another kind of dull game offensively, but I wrote them in once again, and unfortunately we're disappointed. But I wrote them into Grey Cup, so they've already kind of been brainwashed a little bit to CFL fans, which is just the biggest reason why I've tried to do this podcast is the
Yeah,
platform
absolutely.
that we're given with the Canadian Football Fanatics. We're able to people that follow us on social media might not be CFL fans, but they might see a post from us or a retweet from us on Twitter or something like that and be intrigued or curious, right? Where that's just been the biggest thing that we've tried to um, I guess implement here on the show and on the channel, right? It's just getting people to realize that we have really good football here in Canada and really good a product on the field, and you should really get out. We mention it every week on the weekly show. If you're in Victoria, Nanaimo, wherever there's junior football being played, and then if the BC Lions are at home, we're always urging people to get out and support and take in the Canadian football. So we're hoping that everybody can come, Canadian football fanatics, and join Blake and I. So Blake, I think that'll do it for us here tonight, buddy. Went about an hour and 15. I think it was good. But to wish you safe travels. I'm not too sure when you're traveling out to Ottawa, buddy, but I wish you safe travels. And I hope you enjoy the game. I hope you and Shane are able to meet up, able to connect, and they're really able to. Maybe you guys are able to do a video or something like that from Ottawa, and enjoy getting to meet each other for the first time in person, and then kind of lay the groundwork for Grey Cup. Hopefully,
Yeah.
it's just the first good time that you guys have, and then once Shane's able to join us out west, it'll be an even better time when Coach Phil and I are able to introduce ourselves to Shane as well. So I know I'll see you on Wednesday, but if I don't, or if you're gone by then, I hope you safe travels, buddy, and get to Ottawa safely. But other than that, like I said before, I will throw social medias in the link in the description. But Blake, is there any final thoughts, any reminders for the people?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all. Thanks everyone for tuning in for another show, whether we're calling it a post game or event session. Doesn't really matter, but thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
There's been a couple emergency shows or podcasts, whatever you want to call them, last week. We obviously had the Nathan Rourke one last week. We had a little bit of them. I believe our friend over at Raw Report on social media kind of called this an emergency podcast. Sort of, I guess. Kind of just like I said, wanting to get our feelings out there and not really hide from it. And why I kind of been staying off social media is just I feel like we can get a little bit more out like this in this format, right, where we're able to talk and not be held back with 140 words or whatever it is. So, like Blake said, we will see you guys Wednesday night, and then we will see you guys on the BC Lions preview show later in the week.